Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show that covers all things marketing. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast gives you the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. Whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand, you've come to the right place. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast starts now.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and how is everyone doing? It is Wednesday, it is halfway through the week, and gosh, I bet all of you are just working for the weekend. I'm doing the same. It is summer, it is hot, and we're all sort of, it sucks to be at work sometimes, which is why today's episode is all about your side hustle. And I have a 3-step program, a 3-step idea of how you can make your side hustle your main hustle. If your side hustle has to do with marketing, which I think I can assume it is if you're listening to this podcast. So we have 3 easy steps today that will make marketing easy. So stay tuned for all of that and more on today's episode of the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and let's jump right into today's episode. The first step in our Marketing Made Easy formula is to create your brand. Now, your brand is the most important part of your company next to your product. Now, a lot of people might argue with me that your product is actually the most important part of your company. And to those people, I say, why are you arguing with me? This is a podcast. I can't hear you. However, what I would actually say to them if we are in the same room is, yes, of course, your product is so extremely important. But your brand is a tiny 1%, a little bit more important when it comes to creating your business, because say your business grows bigger than expected and your brand expands to more than one product. This is when your brand is so important. You want your product to support your brand, not your brand supporting your product. So there are 10 different things to consider when you are creating your brand. The first thing I want you to do is Pinterest. This is a great tool. I think it is definitely overlooked when it comes to the marketing community, because although all the images on there are definitely generated content that we can't use or use without giving credit to or buy, so it seems sort of like a waste of time to even go on there. It is a great tool to sort of let your inspiration take a walk down a lane of other people being creative, and you get to see what other people are doing and hopefully get inspired by them. It's a home for all the content in the world, basically, and it is a great way to find techniques or ideas, or again, find inspiration for your own product. One more time, though, I do want to point out that you cannot take or steal anything off of Pinterest without giving credit to the original creator. However, it is very different if you're just getting inspiration from the site and coming up with ideas using other people's ideas. Now that you have all your Pinterest images, and also use Google Images, use other sites that you've heard of, do not feel like you are totally stuck to just using Pinterest. But once you get all those ideas, and I guarantee you already have a few ideas, get that dream journal out and find those ideas. I want you to put everything, and I do mean everything, onto a physical mood board. I did an episode, oh my gosh, so many episodes ago, guys, we're on episode 84, I don't know what number of the podcast this episode was, where we talked about the different types of technology you can use to create a mood board. And now here's the thing, if you still want to use a website, that is totally fine for campaigns, for content, for a photo shoot, for a video shoot. However, if you are trying to create your very first brand, I highly recommend creating an actual physical mood board to post your inspiration on. There's something about just laying it all out, holding it in your hands, and then having to physically hold it and look at it every day that is going to make the difference. The third thing you need to consider is your color scheme. So when you're creating your mood board, when you're creating your Pinterest board, you are going to have a lot of different colors in mind, and there's going to be basically a rainbow or like a paint splatter all over this mood board. There's not going to be a consistent theme yet. So at this stage 3 out of 10 is really when you get to decide what colors you want to use and what your theme is going to be. Are you more minimalist? Are you more loud and bold? Are you trendy? Are you retro? Are you vintage? Those are the questions you need to ask yourself in the third question here of creating your brand, because it's really important right off the bat to know what direction you're going in. When you're on Pinterest and you're creating your mood board, chances are you'll have a collage of a lot of different types of themes and colors, and maybe they don't go well together. Now is the time to sort through all of that and find the ones that actually do go together. Number 4, how versatile is the brand and the color scheme you just chose? So if you chose the minimalist look, how is that going to look on your Instagram profile? How is that going to look on the logo on your product? How is it going to look on a poster? How is it going to look in an email? How is it going to look as an email signature, as a business card? There are so many different things you need to consider when it comes to your brand. Your brand isn't simply just the colors you're using on your website. It goes a lot deeper than that. Basically, every piece of content you push out into the world from this point forward is going to have that brand attached. So make sure you understand how versatile it is and how it is going to look across all these different platforms. Number 5, fonts. Fonts are also very important. They kind of go hand in hand with your theme, but in a different way, because I feel like when a lot of people are creating their brand, they pick one standard font. But here's the thing, you are going to be creating a lot of different types of content, and not in every single type of content is that font going to work. So you need to choose a variety of fonts that all jive well together, look good together, and then list them in order. Which one's your primary, your secondary, and which one's your third font. Number 6, you need to consider your logos. Now, this is the point in which if you need to hire a graphic designer, I totally understand. These questions do become a little bit more difficult as we go forward. But number 6 is when you start considering logos. You know, you have your theme, you have your colors, you know how versatile it is, you know what fonts you want to use. Now it is time to do a logo. And again, hire a graphic designer, or maybe you could use a site such as PicMonkey or Canva, but come up with a logo that again is versatile, goes with your theme, and overall will work for the brand you are trying to create, because your logo is what is going to represent the brand across all of the different types of content and all of the different types of product you are creating. Number 7, your website. Your website is basically like a home for the brand. It's where a lot of people start their brand and then end their brand. They forget to carry it out from there. So when it comes to your website, make sure every single piece, every single component that goes into it has a connection to your brand. Even if it's your About You page, it's your Contact Us page, it's the history of, it's the buying and selling PDP, the product display page, whatever it may be, it still needs to represent your brand and carry the brand with it. So really, when you're creating your website, do a deep dive and do a thorough inspection into every single element and component that is going into it, so that you know that it's all connected to your brand and that it all flows and jives well together. Number 8, the 8th thing I want you to consider is, how is this brand going to look over the holiday season? So this is something that I've worked with a lot of companies and they ended up not actually thinking about. When it's Thanksgiving, when it's Halloween, and especially when it is the Christmas, holiday, New Year's, festivals, that festivity season, what are you going to do to represent your brand with a festive twist? How is your brand going to look in red and green? How is it going to look with a Christmas tree, with a star, with a firework, with a heart for Valentine's Day? These are all types of things you need to consider, because you're going to want to have holiday-themed promotions and holiday-themed content and holiday-themed products. So to go with all of that, you're going to want to ensure that your brand can support those holiday ideas. Number 9, platforms. So right now is a great time in this step-by-step process to understand which platforms you will be using to support the brand. By now you know what your brand is and who you want your brand to be, which is a weird way to put it because that makes it sound like a person, but in a weird way it is. You want it to be a fully fleshed out, living, breathing character, if you will. So by now you know all of that. So which platforms are best going to represent that character that you just built? Is it Instagram? Is it Facebook? Is it YouTube? Is it Twitter? Is it TikTok? Is it all of them? Make that decision and then start planning out how you want to represent that brand on those platforms. Number 10, your style. How does this brand actually make you feel? Is it going to make you feel the same way in 10 years, in 11 years, in a month, in a week, in a day, in 4 hours? Ensure that the style of your brand and the style of your company is something that excites you and you know will continue to excite you for the foreseeable future and could support all of the dreams you have resting on it. Okay, everyone, we are going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast, but when we come back, we are moving on to step 2 of how you can make marketing easy. So stay tuned for more of the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and I will be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast covers everything tech. The hottest mobile phones, tablets, games. We review it, rate it, test it. Whether you're Microsoft or Apple, Android or iPhone, we'll give it to you again. Black and white. The Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and on today's episode, I decided I'm going to help everybody out, and I'm just going to make marketing super easy. So I put together a 3-step process for how you can put together your perfect marketing campaign, build your business from the ground up with these 3 simple steps. Now, obviously, the steps are simple, but the work that goes into these steps isn't so simple. It does take a lot of time, commitment, and energy to be put into all of these steps. So please don't think that I'm just trying to give you like the easy way out here. That is not my intent. I am not trying to make it sound easy or by any means downplay the work we do in marketing. I've worked in marketing basically my entire career, and it's something I love and enjoy, and I understand how hard it really can be to pull off even the simplest of campaigns. So that is not the purpose here. The purpose is if you are starting out, you are looking to rebrand, or you are trying to turn your side hustle into your full-time job, that is the purpose of today's episode, is to make it easy for all of you guys. But if today's episode you find just skims over things a little bit too quickly, maybe we don't dive deep into all the details you wanted me to, guess what? We have 84 other episodes basically about this. It is always focused on making marketing easy and accessible for you guys. That is the purpose of this podcast. So if you're a new listener, welcome. Please go check out the other episodes. I talk about everything from influencer marketing to microblogging to subscription boxes. So definitely go check out our other podcast episodes and then come come back and let me know what you think. It is actually incredibly easy to let me know what you think. I am the runner of the GSMC Marketing Podcast social media. I answer all of your questions. If you guys have any, I tweet on there. I post on Instagram. I share on Facebook. I share on YouTube. Yes, we also have a team of people who does that as well. But I am on there. I am not the only person on there, but I also don't just like pump out an episode and then ditch. I do want to hear from you guys. I do want to connect with you guys. So if you have anything you want to say, please feel free to head over there and let me know your thoughts through social media, or you can write it in the review down below. The third option is also to reach out to me directly at Mackenzie, MACKENZIE _ Jaquish, JAQUISH. You can find me on all social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter at MAC_Jaquish. So if you have questions, if you have comments, even if you just really, really want to tell me how much you love the show, then please reach out through social media because I would love to connect with you guys. But for now, let's jump back into today's episode where we are talking and moving on to step number 2, which is time to get onto your actual work. It is time to actually start creating your brand, creating your content, and creating your product, and creating the marketing for that product. So in step 1, we went through how to create your brand. There were 10 different things you should consider. I wanted you to look at Pinterest. I wanted you to create mood boards. Think about colors and themes and color schemes. How versatile was your brand going to be? What types of fonts did you want incorporated in your logo, on your website? And how would this brand work in both the holidays and across all different platforms? We also really wanted to make sure, and I want to really make sure that I am drilling this point into you guys, that you need to love your brand. And it needs to be more than lust. You need to feel a connection with your brand that you haven't had with any other brand or with any other company. It needs to be something that you're going to want to carry around with you for the next 20-something years. Even if it fails in a month, you should love it for the next 20 years. And that really is the foundation of building a brand, is knowing what you're passionate about and then going forth and creating something from that. Now that we are getting into the nitty-gritty of it all and we are creating the work that actually needs to be done to make your marketing here, let's start with step number 1, which is I want you to make a list of the resources you already have. Now, I've talked about this resource list on other podcast episodes because it is something that I think everyone in marketing should always have at their beck and call, just beside your desk, have it in your phone, have it on your computer. You need to know what resources you already have so that when you go to create an Instagram post, a marketing campaign, an advertising strategy, whatever it may be, you can go look at that list and say, this is what I already have. And from there, decipher what you need. What do you need to buy? What do you need to upgrade? What do you need to purchase? But most importantly, what don't you need to purchase? And this is the thing. This is the thing I feel like people always forget about when it comes to the resource list, is who do you have? The who is just as important as the what. You can have a very, very fancy dancy camera, but if you don't know how to work it, what good is it? So do you have a photographer? Do you have someone who could teach you photography? Are you able to take the photos? Who do you know that works in a similar industry? Who do you know that hosts events that maybe you could go to? Who do you know that makes posters and t-shirts so that maybe you could start making merch for your product? Having people on your resource list is such a valuable part of the list. This way you know who your team is, even if they don't officially work for your team. Number 2, I want you to create a timeline. Now, the timeline is very important, and I've talked about timelines as well on other podcasts where we've talked about your marketing strategy, but this one's a little bit bigger because we're talking about your company here. We are talking about How long is it going to take you to break even? How long is it going to take you to reach a level of success that you want? And on step 2 here, while you're creating the timeline for this, you're going to get very, very specific and very, very nitty-gritty, the little details, and be so specific that you're driving yourself nuts thinking about what am I going to post on Monday, July 2nd, 2022. Now, obviously, going that far into the future is an impossibility. What I want you to do is to create a timeline that has all the details for the next 6 months and a larger timeline that has the details for the next 2 years, which brings me on to step number 3, which is create goalposts for your company. Like I said before, mark on that timeline when you will break even, when you will have made X amount of dollars, when you'll have paid back all of the loans you made, when you're able to quit your full-time job, when this can become your full-time job. Mark down those goalposts. That way you can put your timeline somewhere very visible and watch yourself get closer and closer and closer to your goals. This is something that will not only help you stay on track of your marketing and keep you going, it is also going to be something that motivates you every single day. Number 4, budget. Budget is so important, and honestly, you guys are probably like, hey, why are we waiting till step 4 to make it here? Shouldn't that be step 1 of part 1? No. This is part 4 of step 2, I guess, or step 4 of part 2, however you want to categorize this episode. But the reason we are waiting this long to create the budget is because I want you guys to create your company without any sort of restrictions, without any sort of handcuffs to a limitation, which is why the budget is so important, but so important to leave until the last possible second while still being totally reasonable to think about, which is why we're bringing it in now. So start considering your budget. Here is the entire world you want to create. How much money is it going to take to create it, and how much money do you actually have? This is when you start budgeting things out and you consider your timeline, you consider your resources, and you consider your dream. Number 5, the 5th thing you need to do to really start going in your own company is to start creating that content and those campaigns that you want to use in your marketing. And it might seem a little hasty or a little bit hard to start creating those before you've actually launched your product, but don't worry, it is totally okay to plan ahead and just get on top of all of that. In fact, I encourage it this way when we move on to step 3, which is time to actually launch your product and your company and your brand. You have stuff all ready to go so that you can just continuously pump out content and pump out campaigns. Okay, everyone, we are going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast. But when we come back, we are moving on to step 3, which is time to push your campaign out into the world. So stay tuned for more of the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and on today's episode, we are talking about how I can make your marketing easier for you. So, for all you dreamers, for all you hustlers, for everyone out there who is just trying to turn their side hustle into their main hustle, or you're working in marketing and you want to improve the game, you want to push yourself, you want to push your marketing campaigns. That is the purpose of today's episode. But not only that, that is the purpose of this entire podcast. We want to come up with fun, easy to use, easy to execute, but are going to give you huge results marketing campaigns. And we want to take a look at companies that inspire you and could help push you in a positive direction. So if this podcast is giving you all of that and more, I want to know and I want to hear about it. So please write it in a review, send it to me through social media. Just let me know your thoughts about this podcast. And while you're doing that, while you're writing your review, I want to give you my thoughts about another podcast. In fact, I want to give you my thoughts about, I think we have something like 1,000 different podcasts on the GSMC Podcast Network. Guys, I've said it once, I've said it twice, I've said it 3 times, and guess what? I'm going to say it one more time. The GSMC Podcast Network is home to so many different podcasts. All of them are equally amazing, terrific, incredible, and just over the top outstanding. I know all of the hosts, and I've talked with them, I've worked with them for a while now, and I have to say they are all so passionate. They all care so much about the content that is being created on the network that it would be a shame not to listen to it because they're working hard for you, the audience. So if this is the first podcast you've listened to by the GSMC Podcast Network, then I highly recommend going and checking out all the other podcasts that we have. We have the Beauty Podcast, which just got a new host and she's fantastic. We have the Tech Podcast. We have Sports and Wrestling. We have Lifestyle. We have so many incredible different pieces of content for you to listen to and enjoy. So please head over there, listen to some new podcast episodes, and let me know which one you think I should listen to next. For now, though, let's jump back into today's episode. We are now on step number 3, which means it is time to push. And here's the thing, guys. I'm going to be real honest with you. I write these episodes in advance, and then I come and I record them. And I wrote step 3, time to push. And I didn't even think that sounds like I'm a doctor and you guys are in labor. But know what? Let's keep going with that metaphor. Let's keep going down that path without getting too graphic. Basically, you have been carrying this baby of a company around for months. You have been building it and turning it into a fantastic little human that you are ready to send into the world. I am now the doctor. I am now going to help you bring it into the world. So let's push. It's time to push. Hold my hand, put on your baby soundtrack, and it is time to push it. All right. Number 1, the first thing you are going to do is have an actual launch date and make it a big deal. Do not underplay this. This is a huge thing in your life. You are launching a company. Do not think, but it's just a small online thing. It's not like I have a storefront. I still have my other job. None of that. You are launching a company. So don't just do it like quietly in the night. Make it a big deal. Make an email list of people you know who are going to be interested in it and send them an email saying, hey, I am starting this business. Come follow me. Come try this product out with me. Come be a part of a community I am building. And then make just a big deal about this one particular day, the launch day. Still tell people that you're starting a company, absolutely, but tell them the day you are starting the company. Don't tell them a week. Don't tell them in the month. Give them that specific day for them to hold on to. Number 2. All right, guys. There's 5 steps here. Don't worry. But it's time to push. We are bringing that into the world. You are hitting that enter button. You are sending that product, that website, that social media page all into the world. People can now buy your product from you. People can now engage with your company. So right now, after step 2, after you've done it, after you've pushed it out, it's live, it's real, it's a real thing. Take a deep breath, take a moment. You can pause the podcast and come back to listen to the other steps. But you just launched an entire freaking company. It may not be as big as Apple. It may not be as big as Amazon, which is the biggest company in the entire world. But it is a big deal, and it is a real company. But hey, now let's move on to step 3, which is don't stop. Just because you launched your company does not mean the work stops. You need to be pumping out content every single day. You need to be making a big deal about the company being launched. You need to keep sending emails. You need to keep pushing yourself, and you need to keep that train moving. Don't just stop. Don't just stall. Don't just be like, well, it's done. It's launched, it's live, I'll just see how it goes. Maybe people will buy, maybe they won't. No, make people buy. Make people see your content, your marketing. That is the purpose of this podcast. That is the purpose of every podcast. I'm not trying to tell you how to start a business. I'm trying to tell you how to start marketing for that business. So once you've launched that product, don't just launch it and leave and then hope it sells. Launch it, leave for a second, come back, and then market it. Throw up some influencers who have used your product on your Instagram page. Get them to tag you. Use subscription boxes to send out to people who you think would like your product, but maybe they just haven't had a chance to try it yet. Do a promo box. Do a promo party. Go to local events. Go to local community events. Post on social media every single day. Just because the product is real, just because it's live, does not mean your work is done. Finally, moving on to step number 4, you have been pushing for a while now. It is time to start reflecting. And when your company is new, you're going to be doing a lot of reflecting. I mean, let's be honest, you're always going to be doing a lot of reflecting. Reflecting is a big, big job of marketing. But when your company is new, it happens a lot more frequently. So the day of your launch, how did you do? How much did you sell? How was your engagement level? What could you do better? Then a week, then a month, then 2 months, then bi-weekly, then weekly again, and then go back to the months. The reason we do the back and forth is so that you can really, really start to track your progress once you get more and more into actually building a client base. Number 5, and guys, this is the most important. So if you haven't had your pen and paper out this whole time, I recommend bringing it out now so that you can write this one down, because I promise it is going to be the most important thing I say on this podcast episode. Don't stress, take things easy, and get ready for one very, very, very crazy adventure, because you just launched and you have been working on this company, this product, and the marketing for it. And it's not just going to stop once you break even. It is not just going to stop when you've made X amount of dollars. This is something that you're going to have to continuously work on, which is the point of this podcast. It's helping you do the continuous work. So please do not give up, do not stress, and just get yourself ready for this adventure, because I promise that it is worth it. Okay, everyone, that is it for today's episode of the GSMC Marketing Podcast. We learned so much on today's episode. We talked about creating your brand, getting things going, and then pushing that product out. I really, really enjoyed today's episode, and what would make it all so much more worth it is if I could hear from you about what you would like to hear on the next episode of the GSMC Marketing Podcast. So again, do not be a stranger. We have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of the things. I have all of the social media as well. Again, also you could just write it in the review. Very, very simple way to get a hold of us, and let us know what you would like to hear more of next time. For now, though, you have been listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and I will see you next time.
You've been listening to the GSMC Marketing News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to any podcast app and you'll find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news, you'll find it all on the GSMC Podcast Network. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.